Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gil Gross. It is time to look back at the first week of the US Open. It is late on a Monday night. Apologies for the people on the other side of the Prime Meridian. I know that this could be a Tuesday that you're going to watch this on, but we had to wait for the fourth round to reach its conclusion. And I'll look back on each fourth round matchup in this one, look ahead to the quarterfinal, maybe rework some predictions. I think that's in order. And I will hit your comments at the end of this video to get a temperature on some of the major storylines that have come about over the first week of the US Open. It's been a feisty tournament. I'd say an entertaining tournament, though. Lots of very interesting storylines. I want to start before I go through all these fourth round matchups. I want to start with the one storyline that kind of looms large over the rest, and that is the world number one, the defending champion, and the number one seed, Novak Djokovic. He is out. Had to retire in the third set against Stan Wawrinka in their fourth round match. Wawrinka was up 2-0. And I want to kind of go over parts of that match. I'll say that the tennis was pretty great for most of for the majority of the first two sets, and we'll get into the crowd's reception of Djokovic after he had to retire. We'll get into that a little bit later because people commented about it. But until then, I'm just going to hold off, and I do want to focus on the beginning of that match and what we saw. And then kind of get more into Djokovic's retirement, because I think that there aren't a lot of players in the world that could have taken that first set off of Djokovic, the level he was playing. I don't think that many players could have come back from down a break in that second set at the level Djokovic was playing at. Not 100%, but still a pretty high level. At the beginning of the third set, things really dropped off, I think especially mentally, and injuries are demoralizing. Pain is demoralizing. It's not, it shouldn't be taken as an attack on Novak Djokovic that part of the reason he retired was that he was down 2-0. It is hard to fight through pain when you're losing, and it's a lot easier to fight through pain when you're winning. And at the end of the day, someone at some point was going to be able to push Djokovic to the point where he could not move forward. At some point, the left shoulder was going to get in the way, and it was really just a matter of when. Djokovic had a scan on the shoulder, and it showed no structural damage, and that's why he went ahead and played. But there are plenty of injuries that don't have structural damage that are A, very painful, and B, don't get any better. The most famous one is tennis elbow. If I'm not mistaken, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not Dr. Gross, but if you have an MRI on your elbow and you have tennis elbow, the MRI is going to come out negative. Your elbow looks fine, but it's not when you have tendinitis. It's painful and it doesn't get better. And Wawrinka pushed Djokovic to a point where physically he was in a bad place, tactically he was in a bad place, therefore mentally he was in a bad place, and it was the perfect storm to push Djokovic out. But Wawrinka is now 3-1 in his last 4 meetings against Djokovic in slams. It's a difficult matchup. Here's what I saw with the tennis. I think that it's worth giving Wawrinka some credit here. I think that it's worth going over the things that Wawrinka does that bother Djokovic, because I don't believe Djokovic would have lost to all that many players. I think that with with a bum shoulder, he still would have beaten a lot of guys, but not Wawrinka. One thing Wawrinka did was he beefed up. He really brought the heat on serve, especially the first serve, and especially in the first set. And he got a good amount of free points on Novak Djokovic. Djokovic is a guy who's used to winning the serve return battle because he has such an exceptional return. But Wawrinka was able to get some free points on the first serve. On the other end, it was the block return of Stan Wawrinka that was really giving Djokovic trouble. And what Wawrinka will do is he'll actually return pretty tight on the baseline, but he'll block and retreat. Block deep and retreat. That's what he does with his court position. The conditions combined with maybe Djokovic lacking a little bit of power maybe on his backhand side, but I think the conditions were big here. And the way Wawrinka was moving and using his court position. Djokovic was having trouble doing damage off the first ball. There were a lot of first ball errors. So serve, Wawrinka block return, error from Djokovic off the ground right away. That happened a good amount. But in general, Wawrinka was just able to dig his teeth into a lot of rallies off of Djokovic's serve. And I think kind of the slower, and by the way, in terms of the court speed, I think it's playing pretty medium. At night, I think it gets kind of slow. A little bit slow. But closer to medium. I don't think that it's crazy slow. Still, I think Djokovic was having trouble doing damage off the first ball. So already, they're getting kind of into these neutral rallies very often off of the block return. And then I feel like Wawrinka was able to have a lot of success on defense and a lot of success from the back of the court, and Djokovic wasn't able to get it out of Stan's strike zone in baseline rallies. And what you had was just a back and forth kind of slugfest. It felt like Djokovic was really getting reeled in to the kind of baseline rallies that Wawrinka wants to play, which is just these very linear power baseline rallies with a lot of kind of steady kind of rhythm and not a lot of movement, to be honest. And if anything, it was Wawrinka moving Djokovic, which is sometimes the case in this matchup. But it was Djokovic unable to get the ball out of Stan's strike zone. And Stan having a lot of success on defense, not because he's fast, but because he was able to give himself that extra time playing really deep in the court, and the conditions were slow enough to give him that time. So I also thought that Djokovic just had a lot of trouble finishing points, finishing rallies. And that's where I feel like the net game could have come into play a little bit more for Djokovic. Either that or he had to try to bring Stan in. He tried drop shots, some not the best kind of shot selection on a lot of the drop shots. He's a little bit too in love with the backhand drop shot right now, in my opinion. He tried drop shots, but it's got to be a little bit more than that. I would say, a little bit more short angle, sometimes taking pace off the ball, getting it shorter in the court sometimes, which is not Djokovic's game. Taking some pace off, not Djokovic's game. It felt like he needed to do something different to bother Stan, who is in this incredible rhythm from the back of the court. And he's got more power than Djokovic. He's got really off both wings, he can hit bigger. So if they're going to get into this back and forth slugfest where variety isn't really coming into play, Wawrinka has a really good chance in that. And I felt like Djokovic was maybe not fully focused and a little bit distracted by his injury because he didn't seem to be searching for answers. He seemed to be kind of doing the same things and trying to just fight through it, where he really did need to search for answers. I think he could have found answers. The way people can beat Wawrinka is If you play the short angles, you can bother his movement more. He wants to be deep in the court. If you can bring him in, or if you can finish at the net, that's how to take advantage of the kind of court position that Wawrinka plays with. Um, you can try to serve and volley. I don't really advise that for Djokovic. Some players can try to do that off of his block return, but there had to be something there, and Djokovic unable to really make those adjustments. Very thirsty tonight. No espresso. It's too late, but I still have my cup. And for the English viewers or whoever, the EPL, the Premier League fans who are viewing this, I'm not actually a West Ham fan. I don't, but I just like the colors. And when I was in England, when I was in London, I went to see the Queen Elizabeth Park because I wanted to see where the Olympics, I think, was it 2012, 2010, something like that. I think 2012. I wanted to check that out. It's beautiful. They've done a very nice job with that. So I just picked up the kit, but I do not support West Ham. I don't really support any soccer club, to be honest with you. Maybe Tottenham. I like them. Um, so that's what I'll say about Djokovic, and I'll get more into the crowd and all that um, when we get into the comment response. I'll also get into Wawrinka and his upcoming meeting with Medvedev when I preview the quarterfinal. But let's take a look at these fourth round matchups, and we will start with the matches that took place on Sunday, starting with Federer and David Geffen. Probably the most disappointing match of the weekend. I don't know if something was wrong with Geffen, but he seemed very unbothered. He seemed very content to go away quietly. And he's just too talented a player for him to get rolled like that and not seem bothered by it. And that's what frustrated me about this match, is that Geffen was making a lot of errors, and he was spraying the ball, and Federer started to really feel it and really toy with him. It bothered me that Geffen just didn't look very frustrated, and that's what I'll say about that match is Geffen didn't show up, and it's almost like he came on the court without self-belief, and he's selling himself short if that's the case, because he's number 15 in the world, or maybe he might not be 15 in the world. He's the number 15 seed, and he's such a talented player. He's selling himself short if he doesn't think that he can play Roger Federer closer than he just did. Second match is Grigor Dimitrov against Alex de Minaur, and that's a straight set win for Grigor Dimitrov, a rather impressive one. Didn't watch the match, but I heard that the unforced error count from de Minaur was awfully high, uncharacteristically so. Dimitrov with his breakout tournament in 2019. Congratulations to Grigor, and there's more work to be done, of course. It'll be Roger Federer next, but so far so good. This will really help his rankings points. I believe he slipped to number 76 in the world, something pretty ugly for Dimi's standards. And he had a nice draw in this one, and he seems to be feeling pretty good right now. Dominic Koepfer, world number, I want to say 122. I know I'm just pulling these rankings out from my mind. What is wrong? What is wrong with me? No, number 118. Check that, 118. He took on Daniil Medvedev and pushed Medvedev to 4 sets. Won the first set, did Koepfer, but Medvedev prevailed. Koepfer is a lefty with a lot of power, especially on his two-handed backhand. Massive two-handed lefty backhand, flat, likes to hit it cross-court. And Medvedev, who's carrying a lot of injuries, continues to gain energy from the New York crowd, who has been viciously booing him after he flipped them off in his previous match. Yes, this is real life. You heard me correctly. More on that later. The final match of Sunday was Djokovic and Wawrinka. I just went over that in depth. It was 6-4, 7-5, and then 2-1 before Novak retired. Today, the first match to finish was Zverev and Schwartzman on Ash. And this is one where Zverev got roped into Schwartzman's game a lot. The double faults were a problem. He had over 15 double faults in this match. And Zverev was packing a bigger punch from the baseline, dominating court position, playing more on the rise. And Zverev was working very hard, not making that many errors, grinding from the back. And ultimately, Schwartzman's going to win that game. Schwartzman's got more quickness from the back of the court. He defends a bit better than Zverev. He was able to finish points better when Zverev dropped the ball short. Schwartzman was able to jump on it. Zverev he has no midcourt game right now, no offense, and you combine that with the troubles that he's having on the second serve, and Schwartzman was able to capitalize and come through. Second match, Rublev and Berrettini. It is Berrettini in straight sets, which was a surprising result to me. Not shocking, but a bit surprising, mostly because it was in straight sets. No surprise if Berrettini won in a close match. But Rublev, with the form that he's been in, wasn't expecting that. Didn't catch this one either. But Berrettini's crafty guy. He's got a really good backhand slice and a massive forehand that he likes to use the slice to set up. And he serves really big. And he's got a lot of touch, good drop shots. So, tricky guy who can take the racket out of your hand. He can toy with you. But if you get Berrettini on the move, you're going to have a lot of success. Gael Monfils taking on Pablo Andujar. A surprise fourth round appearance for Pablo Andujar, but Monfils wiped the floor with him. 6-1, 6-2, 6-2. Much needed result for Monfils because he went 5 sets in a great match against Denis Shapovalov in the round prior. So that's a really good job by Monfils taking care of business, and he looks fantastic. And then finally, Nadal and Cilic. I want to take a little bit longer on this match. What did I see out of Nadal? It was first of all just a really interesting adjustment from Rafa in this match. In the second set, he was leaving way too many balls short in the court, and Cilic was teeing off. Cilic was hitting massive, pushing Nadal around the court, bullying him, especially on the second serve return. And Nadal, good problem solving, recognized that himself. That, look, I'm returning the second serve from way back on the fence, and it's landing short, and he's killing me. So Nadal moves up and is able to take time away off of, with his second serve return. And it was a night and day difference from Nadal. So a really good adjustment there. Again, sometimes it works for Nadal to move back on the second serve when he's actually hitting it with conviction, but he was way back and not hitting it very well. So to his credit, he moved up and started hitting it better. So a good job from Nadal there. He also found his forehand, I'd say, in the third set. First 2 sets it wasn't really there. Throughout the tournament, I don't think that his forehand has been at 100%. And then the other thing to watch is absorption of pace with Nadal, which got better and better. He really started to find his game. Third and fourth sets were excellent from Nadal, and it was the best match that I've seen Cilic play in quite a while. And then the other thing is that Nadal is serving kind of like he served at Wimbledon, which is a pretty high serving level, worth noting. He's in kind of the 117 to 120 range that I think is a really good range for Nadal to be. And his second serve is up near triple digits, which it's often not up that high. So Nadal has continued his aggressive serving pattern. He needs to find the conviction and the confidence on his forehand. That hasn't been there for every match. It usually doesn't really, he'll usually be able to get away with it. But once he faces better competition where he really does need to dictate, he needs to find that forehand, and he did against Cilic when he needed to in the third and the fourth set. There's your quarterfinal matchups. Pop them on the screen. Jose Morgado on Twitter. Why not? Wawrinka against Medvedev, Federer against Dimitrov, Monfils against Berrettini, Nadal versus Schwartzman. Let's dig into these. The first one, Wawrinka and Medvedev. That's a matchup I'm really looking forward to, especially when they trade backhands. I'm wondering who's going to get the upper hand here. Couple things. First of all, Medvedev is dealing with a lot of injuries. I mean, he's dealing with a shoulder. He's dealing with some. It's an upper. I forget. Hip abductor. Hip abductor. That's what it's called. So Medvedev's banged up. He's banged up, and he played a lot of tennis in August, and it seems that it's catching up with him. And he seems to be saying that the crowd keeps kind of willing him on and urging him on. So that's one thing to look out for, is that it's very possible we don't get a Daniil Medvedev who's in 100% health. For Wawrinka, played a tremendous match against Djokovic. I would say that he should be able to generate a lot off of Medvedev's balls, even though it stays low, especially on his backhand. And I actually think he'll trade his cross-court backhand quite well against Daniil, who plays with a lot of depth, doesn't really bother Stan with the court position that Stan likes. Stan likes time. He likes to hang back 7 feet behind the baseline and take big cuts at the ball. And if you hit with a lot of depth, Wawrinka doesn't really mind. It doesn't really bother Stan with the strength he has from the back. I believe that Wawrinka and Thiem are good matchups against guys like Medvedev and Djokovic, who normally bother their opponents a lot with depth. But those are two guys who have the kind of strength where they're able to overcome that quite nicely. By the way, Medvedev's hitting his forehand so much better than I think he was 6 months ago, and he's hitting his forehand so much better than I thought he was in 2018. And we'll see if it's just a phase. Maybe it's just a phase. Maybe his forehand will go back to how it was before, because his technique is still quite strange, not very fluid, a little bit slappy, on the slappy side, I want to say. But right now it's working really well. So I don't know if it's gonna if this is an improvement in his game, or if it's just a phase, which we see from time to time. Some players just, they find a shot and it goes away. That happens sometimes. But I don't think Wawrinka's going to be overly bothered by Medvedev's depth on his backhand, overly bothered by how low Medvedev's shots stay, because Wawrinka is able to generate so much RPM, especially on his backhand, but on his forehand too. And I also feel like Wawrinka has the kind of shot tolerance where Medvedev's consistency might not bother Wawrinka very much. I think what mainly bothers Wawrinka is when you can be very versatile offensively, and you put Stan on the run and you make him uncomfortable. I mean, there are Wawrinka, his defense can be okay, but his defense can also be pretty bad. And if you can attack his second serve, that's also a good thing. Medvedev, a little bit iffy on that. Sometimes he's able to attack second serves, but oftentimes not. And also, I think that similar to Djokovic, Medvedev isn't the kind of guy who will really do a lot of damage off of Wawrinka's block return. All this considered, I'm picking Wawrinka to move on. Back in a major semifinal for Stan after the double knee surgery. How about that? That's what I think is going to happen, but we'll see. Federer against Dimitrov. I don't have the head-to-head on hand. I'm actually going to look it up right now because I'm curious. But I imagine it's not very good for Wawrinka. That's just a hunch I have. The biggest difference between Federer and Wawrinka is the sharp decision making and the construction of rallies, construction of points. Federer, and this is where I feel like they're opposites, and this is where they were calling Dimitrov baby Fed, and it wasn't really there because Federer is he has an extremely sharp mind when it comes to constructing and building a point. And Dimitrov, a lot of the time, doesn't really know what he wants to do with things, where he wants to go with the ball, what shot he wants to go for, and that's where that's a big difference between these two, and that's where I feel like Federer is going to be the first, is going to be the aggressor in this matchup, and that's what I'd be concerned about for Dimitrov, especially backhand to backhand. Federer has the advantage there. He has it forehand to forehand as well. He's got a better serve. He returns better. 7-0, Federer against Dimitrov. See? Knew it. Dimitrov's never beaten Roger Federer. I'm picking Federer. Next one is Gael Monfils and Mateo Berrettini. This is tough because I haven't seen Berrettini that much in this tournament. I haven't seen Monfils as much as I'd like either. But I'm going to go with Monfils. Nothing tactically. Just feel like he's very much so ready, is Gael Monfils. And I'm not really sure about Mateo Berrettini in that respect. But I felt like he was ready post-Australian Open with the level that he has. And I'm just glad to see with the level that he had. And I'm glad to see he's found it again. The main thing with Monfils is he's punishing short balls. He's not letting his opponent get away with short balls. Therefore, he's saving energy. He's finishing points when he should be finishing points. He's not playing extra balls. At the same time, when he's pushed to defensive positions, he's willing to play defense and not always counterattacking. Because he is sharper in his shot selection, he's wasting less energy. It's enabling him to play shorter matches. It's enabling him to be steadier throughout matches and not have kind of up, down with his energy levels. Monfils is in a really, really good place. So I'm picking him. Nadal and Schwartzman. Schwartzman, this should be a really fun match to watch. Schwartzman has given Nadal some tough matches. I think he's got a great high backhand, which helps against Nadal and his cross-court forehand. Ultimately, Nadal has more firepower from the back. There will be a lot of neutral baseline rallies played in this, and Nadal's forehand should be the difference. He found it against Cilic. It should be the best shot on the court against Schwartzman. It's the shot that's gonna cause the most damage. That includes the Diego Schwartzman serve, obviously. It includes, really anything that either of these opponents can bring. It comes down to the Nadal forehand being the biggest weapon on the court because Schwartzman can do a lot with Nadal. He can move with Nadal. He can play long rallies with Nadal. He can't hit forehands with Nadal. So those are the quarterfinal picks. I do believe we are going to get a Federer final. I do believe that's in store for us. So yeah. It's never happened at the US Open. Maybe people will be mad at me if it doesn't happen for jinxing it, but that's only if you're superstitious. Let us not waste any time. Let us go to the comments. I've went quite long here, which I'm a little bit concerned about. So let's go 10 minutes. Let's go to the 40-minute mark before we wrap it up. Axiomatic Films asks, what do you make of the U.S. Open crowd during the Novak match? Were they in their rights to boo him off the court and cheer during circumstances such as double faults, or did they go too far? I didn't hear cheering during double faults, but I certainly heard the boos off the court. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah, so no, I don't think they're in the right For sure, they're not in the right. But I would refer people to what Novak Djokovic said after the match when he was asked about it, and Djokovic said, to his credit, he had some understanding that a lot of people in the crowd would not be aware of Djokovic's circumstance with his left shoulder. And I understand why people were a little bit surprised in the crowd if they didn't understand the circumstance because of the level Djokovic was playing. It was a bit of a kind of shocking, kind of out of nowhere. Djokovic retired after losing the second set that maybe people wouldn't see coming if they weren't aware of the prior circumstances. So in that sense, you can be understanding of people in the crowd that were surprised and disappointed. Uh, I would never ever say it's okay to boo a player who's retired, unless it is very clear that are they don't care, which is obviously not true in the case of Novak Djokovic. He wants to be out there. He wants to be healthy. He wants to be playing, but he couldn't do it. Um, in general, would they have booed Federer or Nadal? Probably not. Uh, there is no denying that the New York crowd, similar to the London crowd, has, as a whole, embraced Nadal and Federer probably a little bit more than Djokovic. But I will say that Djokovic has won over the New York crowd before. I think he has. I mean, maybe I'm insane, but I feel like I'm horrible with dates. But I was it the 2013. Anyway, there have been some U.S. Open finals, where he's played Nadal, and I feel like the crowd's been 50-50. I would also rewind and I would go to some incredible points that they played in the first set where Djokovic got to a drop shot and hit a winner down the line after a crazy, unbelievable point where I thought the crowd went berserk for Djokovic. The New York crowd, it's gonna be very up and down. Now I have a unique perspective on this, as a New Yorker and as a New York sports fan. I think, I can tell you guys that it's, and this is true for all the Northeast of the United States, there's a different kind of pressure and culture that, in sports where New Yorkers will often boo their own teams that they root for when they're not happy. New Yorkers will boo anything. I mean, Philadelphia, for example, Northeastern team, they booed Santa Claus once. They booed Santa Claus. It's the culture in the Northeast. It's very much with sports. It's a little cutthroat, but it goes both ways. I'd say it's the U.S. Open is the most electric crowd. I think a lot of players love playing in New York because of that. I think Nadal loves it. I think Del Potro loves it. Um, and even Medvedev said that. Medvedev loves it. He's getting booed. He loves it. I think sometimes Djokovic has loved it. I know Nadal, I mean, Nadal has said he likes it. So it goes both ways. Positive energy, negative energy. The common thread is there's a lot of energy and, you know, they don't hold back. And are they polite? Are they respectful? No. That's not New York. It's just not New York. Nikhil Tanwar says, tough year for Djokovic on hard court so far. Only one final and 6 hard court tournaments played. Yes, very interesting. If Rafa wins U.S. Open, he will lead Djokovic by 2,000 points in the ATP race and certainly end year number one. What is the reason for inconsistency of Djokovic this year? First of all, I apologize. On last Monday, I saw something on Twitter that I think I read incorrectly that Djokovic had secured year-end number one. Wasn't true. I apologize for that. I hate it when I make mistakes like that. It is very much possible for Nadal to overtake Djokovic, especially now because he lost his U.S. Open title points. What's happening on Djokovic on hard courts? One, I feel like the return isn't as invincible as it's been. I think with Medvedev, he ran into someone who was kind of redlining. I think after the Australian Open, when he went to Miami and Indian Wells, I thought he was out of shape and looked like he hadn't trained. I think versus RBA in Doha, I mean, RBA played really, really well. It's a tough matchup for him, and he probably hadn't peaked yet. He wasn't in full fitness. And then in this case, he got injured. So, you can go match by match, and there are reasons. And a lot of people in the comments who are upset and don't like to hear analysis, they like to say, that's an excuse. No, when the best players, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, when they lose to players under them, guess what? There's usually a reason. Usually a reason. Not an excuse. Usually a reason. Besides, saying that Djokovic is out of shape, that's not an excuse. That's his fault. Lots of emphasis on the majors for Djokovic. Stefano Disparati. My sensation is that Nadal is not at his best. Instead, Federer is improving day after day, and he'll be perfect for the final. What do you think about Nadal's game and physical condition? Do you think Nadal has more chances of beating Federer here on this surface, since we are on a fast court? The result will be the same as in 2017. Okay. I haven't been overly impressed by Nadal until the very end of that Cilic match. I don't think that he's really found it on his forehand. I think his returns have been kind of shaky at times. At the same time, he's played perfectly well enough. He hadn't dropped a set until the Cilic match. I haven't been that impressed with Federer either. Granted, I missed the Dan Evans match, but I don't think Geffen gave him much of a test, so I couldn't tell much from that. And in his first two rounds, he had shaky starts. So I don't think either has really blown me away in the lead up. And I'm kind of going back and forth. The answer is I do think this is a better surface for Nadal than Australia, but I have trouble. I'm increasingly having trouble understanding what the best surface is when it comes to hard court for Nadal. I know he wants the ball bouncing high. I know that. So I think he prefers the conditions in the daytime. The ball's a bit more lively, a bit bouncier. But I don't really know if he would prefer it faster or slower. Believe me, it's more complicated than it would seem. You'd think Nadal, king of clay, he wants slow. But I don't know if it's like that for him on hard courts, because he does not defend as well on hard courts as he does on clay. Not even close. Sunflowers of Inferno. Why are the Americans so disrespectful to Djokovic? And is it the situation among only the rich people who know nothing about tennis, or is it the general situation? Well, I mean, one, I think the U.S. Open crowd is a little bit less rich than a normal tennis crowd. I would say it's a little bit less rich. I'll just say that. But I think that New Yorkers did not take kindly, or the New York crowd did not take kindly to when Djokovic showed visible frustration that he was not being supported against Federer and Nadal, and I think that made it worse. I think Daniil Medvedev just did the same thing. Now, Djokovic did not do anything as dumb as Medvedev did. I mean, Medvedev flipped off the crowd. He gave him the bird. Djokovic has never done anything like that. But Djokovic has looked visibly frustrated with the New York crowd, at times, especially against Federer. And I don't think that has served him well. At the same time, I just don't think that Djokovic has never gotten support in New York. I feel like there have been times where New Yorkers have embraced him. When he played tennis with John McEnroe after the match, I mean, there have been times where he's been on the good side and people have rooted for him. I mean, Wawrinka is a very popular player who was playing some very inspiring tennis, and Djokovic could have won over that crowd, in my opinion. There was a chance, or at least a section of it. But Wawrinka was playing the more inspiring, and he was playing the more inspiring tennis. Now Djokovic, no, there's definitely reason for frustration there. where the crowd could certainly treat him better, and he didn't deserve what he got when he got booed off the court. I want to skip ahead. Last question to Mark Marini, who asks, how do you feel about the Medvedev villain mentality that he has seemingly embraced? I definitely want to hit on this. I love this. This is tremendous. More of this, please. Every good story has a villain. Every good story has drama. And guess what? This is going to make Medvedev bigger. This is great for everyone. This is great for the fans. This is great for Medvedev, because guess what? As long as they're watching, they're watching. And that should be Medvedev's mentality. I think that is Medvedev's mentality. As long as they're energetic, they're giving him fuel. The crowd is giving him fuel. If Medvedev gets Arthur Ashe and fills the stadium with people who want him to lose, that's better than if no one cared about Daniil Medvedev, if nobody talked about Daniil Medvedev. Tennis players are personal brands. They make money on endorsements more than anything, more than prize money at the top of the game. They would be best served to support themselves by being real and showing their personality. And if that means kind of making what you'd call in the fight game a heel turn, even if you're being a villain, that's actually going to make more people care about you. And every tennis player should want to be cared about. They win, they get more money, they get a bigger following, they get better courts, they sell more tickets. Now, not that they get the direct benefit of that, but believe me, they do. And, at the end of the day, and the fans win because it's engaging. I absolutely love what Medvedev is doing, embracing the situation that he's put himself in, and taking all that negative energy and using it in his favor on the court. It's absolutely tremendous. What I love about Daniil Medvedev is he is 110% authentic and real. I absolutely love that. And the more real we can get, the more we can learn these players' personalities. Tsitsipas is good at it as well in the next gen. The more we can, but he's very quirky. But the more we can learn these players' personalities, the more people are going to care about these players. And we need people to care when Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic are gone. That's the show. Hopefully, or definitely, much more content coming your way this week. Last week was very busy, and I was just trying to watch as much as I can. But there will be, at the very least, semifinal previews, semifinal recaps, final previews, and final recap. That is the minimum. Please join me. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.